Hello, my name is Eric Carter, and I am making this short video for my environmental class to discuss the great cost that comes to the Earth from the products that we enjoy every day. This video is about the Chernobyl disaster, and I found that there are many perspectives regarding this crisis, depending on who is presenting the information. I found information on Wikipedia, the World Nuclear Association, a children's charity organization, documentaries, National Geographic, and other news websites. We must ask ourselves, how did this happen? Can we prevent it from happening again? Who is responsible for making sure it doesn't happen again? And what have we learned from this? And finally, is the risk of another disaster worth the energy we receive from nuclear energy every day?
The Chernobyl disaster was a devastating nuclear accident that occurred in April 1986. A reactor at the power plant exploded due to a reactor design flaws and the reactor operator's errors. The fire caused by the explosion produced considerable updrafts for about 9 days. Radioactive material was carried by wind into parts of the western USSR and Europe.
The Chernobyl accident is considered the most disastrous nuclear power plant accident in history, both in terms of cost and casualties. It is one of the only two nuclear energy accidents classified as a Level 7 event, the maximum classification, on the International Nuclear Event Scale, the other being the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster in Japan in 2011. The struggle to safeguard against scenarios which were perceived as having the potential for greater catastrophe, together with later decontamination efforts of the surroundings, ultimately involved over 500,000 workers and cost an estimated 18 billion rubles. The accident motivated safety upgrades on all remaining Soviet-designed reactors. So we learned that the workers were doing a safety test that went horribly wrong. Who was responsible for training these workers? I went on to see the World Nuclear Association claims that Chernobyl accident was the result of a flawed reactor design that was operated inadequately trained personnel. It was the direct consequence of the Cold War isolation and resulting lack of any safety culture.
The World Nuclear Association states that UNSCEAR, United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation, I'll say UNSEER for short, says that, apart from increased thyroid cancers, there is no evidence of a major public health impact attributable to the radiation exposure 20 years after the incident. However, the World Nuclear Association fails to tell us. This is a direct quote from the UNSEER website. Among the residents of Belarus, the Russian Federation, and Ukraine, there have been up to the year 2005 more than 6,000 cases of thyroid cancers reported in children and adolescents who were exposed at the time of the accident, and more cases can be expected during the next decades.
They placed the blame with the plant workers and equipment. Because of the communism and the Cold War, Russia has not been open to receiving help and guidance from the outside world. These things are all true, but it seems as though our planet has learned things the hard way.
Another source of information was the Chernobyl Children International, a non-profit organization that works with children, families, and communities that continue to be affected by Chernobyl accident. The website tugs at our heartstrings with photos of suffering children. Their goal is to raise money from donations to help orphans and children born with birth defects. They also have a program in which they send children from Russia and Belarus to other countries for a short time so that they can spend some time away from their radiation. My Aunt Joanne and Uncle John took part in a program like this in the years 2008 and 2009. A girl from Belarus and later a boy from Russia stayed with them for a few weeks. The website states that being able to escape radioactive, highly toxic environment for just a few weeks extends a child's life by an estimated 2 years and reduces the contamination levels by 30 to 50%. Just as important, these children return to their communities with a comforting knowledge that the outside world has not forgotten about them. A different viewpoint comes from the animals themselves. People look upon the animals looking healthy and roaming free. They say Chernobyl is the deadliest nuclear accident in history, and yet has become a refuge for all kinds of animals, from moose, deer, beaver, owls, and more exotic species like brown bear, lynx, and wolves, and wild Przewalski horses, a rare endangered subspecies of wild horse introduced to the reserve. Without the interference of people hunting them or ruining their habitat, wildlife is thriving despite high radiation levels. Wildlife has become a much greater magnitude in this area without human contact. The fact could be that human beings are a greater disaster for these animals than nuclear radiation, showing that we take much more than our fair share of room on this planet. The beaver population is growing. Beavers can return the geography of the land to being a little more wild. Eventually, as the beavers fell trees, the land will return to bogs. It will become like it was 100 years ago. The beavers in Ukraine completely changed the look of the landscape, the same way it does in Canada.
The United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation is responsible for scientific evaluations of exposures and effects due to nuclear and radiological accidents. Therefore, there must be also a vigilance in preventing future catastrophes, either with the help of UNSEER or another similar organization. We all need to be well informed as well. When dealing with such destructive power, there are always risks, and if that power isn't taken care of properly, then there will always be consequences. Chernobyl is one of the greatest examples of this in history, and saying that goes, with great power comes great responsibility. People have so far proven to be untrustworthy of that power. We destroy and overuse and take so much as a dominant species that we harm the world a great deal. It is impossible for every person in the world to use power in a responsible way. Not everyone is responsible enough. If people continue to overuse and abuse power, not only the world of animals will be harmed, but people as well.